I never thought I'd be the guy to find out my wife was cheating on me. Honestly, I always believed in the idea that marriage was for better or worse. That, and I trusted Lisa, my wife, more than anyone else in the world. We'd been together since high school, and I thought we knew each other inside out. But something started to feel off lately, like a weird tension I couldn't quite put my finger on. She'd come home late, excuse herself with some vague story about work or a friend. She'd hide her phone more often, and when I asked about it, she'd give me these snippy, defensive answers that just didn't sit right. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed at her job, or maybe I was just overthinking because I'd been working late a lot lately myself. But then she started behaving even more differently. She'd get these little smirks when she thought I wasn't looking, and I noticed her deleting messages, clearing her browser history, stuff that felt obvious but I tried to ignore. Still, the real shocker came when I was cleaning up her side of the bedroom and accidentally knocked over her laptop. It was unlocked, something I'd never seen her do before. I saw a message pop up on the screen while I was reaching for a sock, and it froze me in place. It was from someone named Mark. Just his name and a simple message. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Sorry I missed you today." My heart sank. I looked closer and there were more messages, flirty, suggestive, like they were hiding a secret affair. My stomach twisted. I knew Lisa had always been a bit of a bitchy, self-absorbed woman. She loved her shopping, her wine nights, her friends. But I never thought she'd cheat on me with some high school bully I vaguely remembered from school. Her ex, Jake, we run into him once or twice and she'd brushed him off as just some loser trying to get her attention. But here it was, right on her laptop. I didn't want to confront her immediately. I needed time to process. Instead, I printed out all those messages, all the evidence I could find, and waited. When she got home that night, I was sitting on the couch, face cold, holding the printouts. She came in, threw her purse on the table, and looked at me like I was crazy. I asked her straight up, "Who is Mark? And how long has this been going on?" Her face twisted and she started with the usual nonsense. How I'm paranoid, how she was just talking to an old friend, how I don't trust her. She lied, of course, said she'd never cheated on me, that someone must have hacked her account or she'd been set up. But I knew better. The way she avoided looking me in the eye, the tiny flicker of guilt I saw when she thought I wasn't watching, told me everything I needed to know. What hurt more than anything was the way she lied so effortlessly, like she'd rehearsed it. She kept spouting bullshit about how I was overreacting, how she deserved better than a guy who didn't trust her, how I was just insecure. It was a typical greasy cover-up, but I could see through it. I realized I'd lost my wife to some sad, pathetic ex-bully who reached out after 20 years just to apologize and somehow ended up in my marriage's bed. That moment, I knew this wasn't just a fling or a petty mistake. It was a full-blown betrayal that cut deep into my core. I remember sitting there feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. All the years, all the trust gone in a second. I wasn't sure if I wanted to cry, scream, or just walk out and never look back, but I didn't. Instead, I told her I needed some space, that I'd think about what to do. She looked smug, like she knew she had me cornered, but I wasn't done, not yet. I had a plan forming and it was going to change everything. I just didn't know yet how much it would change me. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't concentrate. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she lied, the way she sneered at me like I was a joke. It was like my entire world had just turned upside down. I kept going over the evidence I found, trying to find some shred of reason or explanation that didn't make me feel sick. But there was none. Lisa had been cheating on me with her high school bully, Jake. I remember hearing about him back in school, always the one causing trouble, the one nobody liked, a typical loser who thought he was better than everyone else. And now, somehow, he had wormed his way back into her life and into my marriage. I started digging deeper. I looked up her phone records, her emails. Sure enough, the messages from Mark were just the tip of the iceberg. There were texts, photos, even some videos. They were explicit, and honestly I felt like my stomach was turning inside out just looking at them. She was having sex with him. I knew it. I felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest every time I thought about how she'd been lying to me the whole time. how she'd been sneaking around, hiding her phone, and smiling at her phone like she was hiding some dirty secret. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to catch her in the act or get some concrete proof. I set up a small hidden camera in our bedroom, aimed at her side of the bed, just to see what she was doing when I wasn't around. I didn't want her to know I was spying, but I also knew I couldn't trust her anymore. If she was cheating on me, I needed to know just how deep this went. I also reached out to Jake, just to hear his side of the story. Turns out, he was the one who reached out to her, apologized after 20 years, said he finally wanted to make amends, that he'd changed, that he wanted to be friends again. That's when everything clicked. He sent her a video, a confession of sorts, saying he'd been the biggest idiot of their high school days, but now he was sorry and he still had feelings for her. She responded in kind, and that's how it all started, the affair. It was a reunion of sorts, an apology that turned into something much darker, and I was the last to know. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. How could she lie to my face, pretend to be the perfect wife, and then sneak around with her childhood bully? It made me furious. I stormed into work that day, and the first thing I did was call a private investigator. I wanted to find out everything about Jake, who he really was, what he was up to these days, and if this was just a fling or something more. While I waited, I started planning. I knew I had to do something to make her regret what she'd done. I didn't want to just leave her. No, I was planning something much more calculated. I wanted to hit her where it hurt. I decided I'd expose everything. I had the evidence from her messages, the videos, the photos. I'd make her see that I knew the truth, that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I also decided I'd confront Jake directly, maybe make him realize how much damage he'd caused. The idea of revenge started to take root in my mind, cold, calculated, and final. I wasn't going to be the sucker who got played. I was going to be the guy who made her pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment I felt like my life was falling apart. So I waited. I let her think she was still hiding her secrets, still getting away with it. But I was just biding my time. Every new message, every new piece of evidence made me angrier and more determined. I knew she loved to think she was smarter than everyone, that she could manipulate her way out of anything. But I was done being the fool. I was done trusting her. When the moment was right, I was going to show her I was not the man she thought I was. That's how revenge starts, I guess, when you stop being passive and start taking what's yours back, piece by piece. At the same time, I couldn't help feeling like I was dying inside. I loved her in some weird way, even after everything I knew, but love wasn't enough to fix this. Not anymore. It just felt like I'd been betrayed by my own wife, someone I'd shared everything with for so long. I kept asking myself, how much of her was real? How much of what she'd told me was just a well-crafted lie? And the worst part, I still didn't know if I wanted to save the marriage or burn it all down. I just knew I had to do something, and fast. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. I spent hours researching ways to gather more concrete evidence and to understand how I could turn this around. My mind raced constantly, thoughts of her lying in bed next to me, her smiles, her fake affection, all of it now felt like a sick joke. I couldn't believe I was living this nightmare. I also kept a close eye on her, watching her behavior, noting every inconsistency, every suspicious move. It felt like I was unraveling her carefully constructed facade, piece by piece. I finally got the results from the private investigator I hired. Turns out Jake hadn't just been a childhood bully. He'd become a low-level scam artist, troublemaker, and a really toxic piece of work. But he wasn't just some random ex from high school. No, he had a long history of shady dealings, and he was desperate for some kind of comeback. That's why he reached out to her, probably seeing her as an easy target, someone to manipulate again. The investigator also confirmed that Lisa and Jake had been meeting regularly, and there were even some photos of them together at a hotel, just the two of them. It was the final nail in the coffin. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I knew I needed to confront her again, but this time I wanted her to see that I had all the evidence. I set up a small, discreet recording device in our living room, nothing big, just enough to catch her in the act if she slipped up or said anything incriminating. I also started preparing my speech, trying to stay calm but firm. I didn't want to lose control, but I also knew I couldn't hold back anymore. The truth needed to come out. One night she was acting unusually nervous, more irritable than usual, snapping at me for the smallest thing. That was the night I decided to push her. I told her I knew everything about her affair, about Jake, about the messages. Her reaction was instant. She went from smug to defensive in a second, denying everything, throwing out more lies about how I was paranoid, how she was just talking to an old friend, how I was trying to ruin her life. I let her talk. I let her lie. I kept the recording going in the background, just waiting for her to slip up. Then, out of nowhere, she started to get aggressive. She told me I was a jealous psycho, that I had no right to control her life, that she was sick of my paranoia and that I was driving her crazy. She accused me of spying on her, of invading her privacy, and she yelled that I was overreacting. All I could think about was how she had lied so effortlessly, how she had been sneaking behind my back for months. I was boiling inside, but I stayed composed. I told her I was done with her bullshit and that she could pack her shit if she wanted to, but I was going to make damn sure she never lied to me again. The night ended with her storming out of the house, screaming, throwing accusations at me, but I didn't care. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I finally had proof, anger that I'd been blind for so long. I knew this was the turning point. I could either keep living in this charade or finally do something more drastic. I chose to confront her head-on, to face the shitstorm, because I wasn't going to be played anymore. Whatever came next, I knew I had to be prepared. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about reclaiming my life from the chaos she dragged me into. That's when I decided I was going to reveal everything. All the evidence, all her lies, and I was going to do it in a way that she couldn't deny. I wanted her to see that I knew her secrets and I was done being the victim. I was tired of feeling like I was losing my mind, tired of feeling so betrayed by the woman I once loved. From this point on, I wasn't just going to react, I was going to take control. And I knew deep down that once I did, there'd be no going back. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, but also a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had all the pieces, her lies, her betrayal, the evidence of her affair with Jake. The plan was forming in my mind, and I was determined to execute it perfectly. I decided I'd confront her again that evening, but this time, I'd do it with everything laid out on the table. No more games, no more hiding. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I was done being played. Throughout the day, I prepared everything. I compiled all the screenshots, saved the videos, printed out the key messages. I even created a timeline showing when she started acting suspicious, when she began messaging Jake, and how it all spiraled out of control. I also took some of her personal things, her phone, her laptop, and hid them in a safe spot, just in case she tried to deny or destroy evidence. I knew she'd try to lie her way out of it, but I wanted to be ready for every possible move she made. That evening, she came home acting even more snippy and defensive. She immediately snapped at me for no reason, then tried to downplay her behavior. I played it cool, like I didn't know what she was up to. I told her I had something to show her, a proof of how I'd been feeling, of how I'd been right all along. Her eyes widened when I revealed the folder on my laptop, showing her all the evidence I had collected. Her face went pale for a second, then she started screaming. Denials, accusations that I was stalking her, that I was crazy, that I was ruining her life. She shouted that I was jealous, paranoid, that I was obsessed with destroying her. Her words were spinning out of control, but I just sat there, watching her unravel. I told her she could keep lying all she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I knew about the affair with Jake, about the messages and the videos. I told her I'd had enough. She finally broke down for real, tears streaming down her face, trying to pretend it was all just a mistake, that she loved me, that she'd never meant for it to go this far. But I saw through her act. I knew she was just trying to save her ass, to find some way to spin her way back into my good graces. I wasn't buying it. I was done with her lies. I told her I wanted her gone. If she was going to cheat and lie and manipulate, then she could leave and I would start over. She looked at me, furious and desperate, and then she spat out something I didn't see coming. She said she did care anymore. She was tired of pretending, tired of this fake marriage. She told me she'd been unhappy for months and that Jake made her feel alive for the first time in years, that she was tired of playing nice, that she'd made her choice, that she wanted out and she was leaving me. I watched her pack her bags, her bitchy attitude replaced with cold indifference. At that moment, I felt this strange mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, to drag her back and force her to see what she'd lost. But another part of me felt exhausted, like I'd been fighting an uphill battle from the start. I realized that the betrayal cut so deep that I might never fully recover, but I also knew I'd dodged a bullet. I'd been blind for so long, but now I saw her true colors. I saw how selfish and manipulative she was, and I decided I wasn't going to be a victim to her games anymore. I helped her pack, watching her go with a bitter taste in my mouth. I didn't cry, not really. I just felt numb. All those years, all the love, all the plans we made, gone in an instant. But I promised myself one thing. I'd rebuild, I'd move on, and I'd never let someone hurt me like that again. I knew it was going to hurt for a long time, but I also knew I'd come out stronger. Somehow, this mess had to be the end of her control over my life. And it was. After she left, I sat alone in the silence of the house, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that I'd been so blind for so long. I looked around at the empty space she once filled with her presence, her scent still lingering faintly in the air. It was surreal. On one hand, I felt relief that the nightmare was over. On the other, I was overwhelmed with sadness and anger. I kept asking myself why I didn't see it coming sooner, why I trusted her so blindly, why I let her manipulate me for so long. Over the next few days, I began the long process of picking up the pieces. I contacted a lawyer, started sorting out the divorce papers, and made arrangements to stay somewhere else for a little while. I needed space to breathe again without feeling like I was suffocating in a web of lies. I also reached out to some friends I'd been close to, people I could trust, to talk things through. The support was unexpected but needed. I told myself I'd be okay, that this wasn't the end of my world, even though it felt like it in those first few days. The hardest part was dealing with the emotional aftermath. I'd loved Lisa once, believed in us, believed in the promise of forever. But love, I realized, isn't enough when someone turns out to be someone completely different behind your back. It was a harsh lesson in trusting your instincts and never ignoring the small signs of trouble. I started to see all the little things I had ignored, her irritability, her sudden secrecy, her dismissiveness, and realized how much I'd excused. That's how manipulation works. She made me doubt myself, made me think I was overreacting or paranoid. Now I saw her for what she was, a bitchy, selfish woman who threw away everything for some cheap thrill with her childhood. Bully. As the days went on, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for what could have been, for the years we wasted pretending everything was fine. But relief because I finally knew the truth. The relief of knowing I was free from her lies and that I could start over. I realized I'd been a fool, but I was also grateful that I'd uncovered the truth before it was too late. I wasn't perfect, and I'd made mistakes, but I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. I was finally seeing myself as someone who deserved better, someone who could stand up and reclaim his life. I also made a decision. I wasn't going to rush into anything, not yet. I needed time to heal, to process, to figure out what I wanted. I knew I'd be angry and hurt for a long time, but I also knew I'd get through it. I'd start fresh, rebuild my confidence, and learn to trust my gut. I'd also keep the evidence I gathered. Sometimes it's good to have proof, just in case someone tries to pull a fast one again. I promised myself I'd never let anyone manipulate me like that again. No more lies, no more betrayal, just me, standing tall, ready to move forward. Looking back, I think I've learned a lot about myself, about trust, about love, and about boundaries. I realize that sometimes people hide who they really are behind a mask, and the only way to see the truth is to be vigilant, to look beyond the surface, to listen to your instincts, and most importantly, to never ignore the small signs of trouble. Because if you do, you might end up losing everything: your partner, your peace, your self-respect. I'm not perfect and I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do know one thing: I'm done being the fool, and I'm ready to rebuild stronger and wiser than before. Now, sitting here alone in this new place, I can finally breathe without feeling like I'm suffocating. The house is quiet, and for the first time in months I can think clearly. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but it's not as raw as it used to be. I've come to accept that love isn't enough sometimes, that people can hide behind masks so well you don't even realize they're strangers until it's too late, but I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived the worst kind of betrayal, and I've managed to pick myself up from the wreckage. Looking back, I realize I was naive to trust blindly. I always believed in honesty and loyalty, but now I see that some people just aren't capable of either. Lisa was one of those people. She loved to lie, to manipulate, to get her way. She thought she was smarter than everyone else, that she could have her cake and eat it too. But I see her clearly now, and I don't regret what I did. Exposing her was painful, but it was also necessary. It forced me to face the truth, to stop pretending everything was fine. I've decided that I won't let her define me. I won't let her betrayal ruin the way I see myself. Yes, I was fooled, but I also learned a valuable lesson. Trust is a fragile thing, and it has to be earned every single day. Now I know that if something feels off, if there are little signs of trouble, I won't brush them aside anymore. I'll listen to those instincts. I'll stand up for myself. And above all, I'll never let myself be played again. This experience has changed me, no doubt. I'll carry the scars, but I'll also carry the lessons. I know now that happiness doesn't come from someone else, but from within. I'll focus on rebuilding my life, better, stronger, more aware. I'll reconnect with my friends, my family, and most importantly, myself. I'll find ways to heal, to forgive, and move on. Because holding onto this pain isn't going to serve anyone, including me. And maybe someday, I'll find someone who truly values me for who I am, who loves me without lies or game playing. But I won't rush it. I'll take my time. I'll be cautious. I'll be wiser. Because I've seen what betrayal can do, and I refuse to let it break me again. This story isn't just about her. It's about how I found my way out of the darkness. About how I learned to trust myself again, and to remember that sometimes the biggest strength is knowing when to walk away. I might have lost a wife, but I've gained clarity, resilience, and a new sense of self-worth. And for that, I'm grateful. I'll move forward knowing that I survived the worst and came out the other side ready to rebuild my life, one step at a time.